Welcome back to the Locked On Buffs, Locked On Big 12 crossover. We talked about what the Big 12 is now, but let's talk about its future, Drake. They obviously are having to play keep up with the Big 12, or not the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, and everyone's looking at the ACC kind of waiting for it to collapse. It feels like it's a house of cards that's glued together, but I see a little wiggle. I see the bottom left corner, it's moving a little bit. So talk to me about what you think the future of the Big 12 looks like.
The Big 12 is going to change its name. And with all due respect to everyone who exists, I don't give a rat's ass about the Big 12 changing its name, to use the verbiage that Mike Gundy used. Because guess what? Twitter, we call it Twitter, right? It changed its name to X. No one's going to call it the All-State 12, the All-State 16, the Meineke Car Care 12. Nobody cares. You will still call it the Big 12. And the logo is going to change on the field. And the logo is going to change on the jersey. And it's going to have a bunch of All-State stuff. And there's going to be private equity. And All-State's going to have a say in what the Big 12 does. But they're a massive corporation. That might not be the worst thing in the world. And then if that puts $10 million, $8 million per team in your pocket every year, you're not going to complain. Me and you, us, the general fans, dude, talk about like the power of a name. Sure, I guess. Like Meta World Peace has changed his 7 times. We see this all the like human beings do it. If the Big 12 does it, we're still going to call it the Big 12, and we're going to make a whole lot more money together. The future of the Big 12 starts with private equity and selling naming rights. From there, we need to sort out how every school can pay for this revenue sharing and revenue distribution with student athletes. Can Cincinnati afford to pay $22 million a year to its athletes? I don't think so right now. Can Iowa State? Jamie Pollard stopped 2 different stadium building projects because he was like, I don't know if we're going to have enough funds for this, showing that even some of the established Big 12 programs are going to struggle to come up with that money when they need to pay the athletes. And if you don't pay the athletes $22 million, you put yourself behind every school that does, including other Big 12 programs. So we got to figure out who we selling the name to, which schools can pay $22 million. And then the third big thing is, and I give it, I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear some news here, which ACC teams are coming into the conference. There was an argument that because of private equity and now this boost in billions of dollars from All-State or whoever, that Clemson and Florida State would look over and go, we could do that. We could help build back the Big 12. And I don't think so. Brett McMurphy even mentioned those two coming to the Big 12 in an emergency scenario. That sounds kind of crazy to me. However, Louisville, Pitt, even Miami at this point. I think Miami and Colorado are 2 fairly even college football programs. A lot of success in the 90s, minimal success in the last 2 decades. You forget about them. You're like, oh, wait a second. It's a power brand. I know Colorado. I know Miami. And what have you done for me lately? Not much. I don't think Miami's that big of a stretch. The SEC is not going to stick its neck out for that school. Neither is the Big 10, it seems like right now. So they are at acquire. They could be an acquisition for the Big 12. And then like a Virginia Tech or an NC State or one of those guys that's left over in there. But I think Louisville's a great place to start. Miami's a great place to start. And that's where the Big 12 goes expansion-wise.
Yeah, I think expansion is really interesting because it's like everyone hates it, but we also love it. And there's this weird...
Talk about.
It is fun to talk about because it's like, okay, give me your craziest idea. You want a school in LA to be a rival with a school in New Jersey? I'm in, that's how expansion works. So I look at the Big 12 and I don't know what the magic number is. I think realistically, you either have to be even with, or maybe a couple schools more than the SEC and the Big 10, just because, just to sort of have that diversity. But at the same time, you don't want to dilute the product. You don't want to have, because the more teams you have, we're talking about all these corporate sponsors. If All-State's coming in to sponsor us, right, and we have 7 additional teams, it's like, okay, well now I'm only getting $5 million extra compared to say $12 million. So you don't want to dilute it. So I think the Big 12 is in a great position because they have a new TV deal. Yeah. They have some interesting brands already, and they kind of have the ability to be picky. So if the ACC schools are up for grabs, and let's just be real, I doubt Clemson and Florida State are both coming. It'd probably be a miracle to get one. It would be God gracing the earth to get 2 of them. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have your pick of the litter for the next biggest brands. Miami's there, like you said. Right. Maybe convince a Stanford to kind of overlook their whatever. No,
stop.
Stanford's a big brand.
No, don't be the guy who just came in here and dropped a Stanford bomb on us.
I'm just
don't
saying.
Do that.
I'm just saying Stanford's probably Big 10 bound eventually, but I'm just saying there's big brands out there.
Guy. You're a Stanford
North Carolina's out there in the open up for grabs. So there's a lot of interesting schools. Duke as well, where you could just have all the power. Imagine a basketball conference, Drake.
Jeez.
Duke, North Carolina, Miami, Kansas, Houston. I'm probably forgetting other ones, but like that would be such a power. Like it would be insane. So the Big 12 has all of the opportunity in the world to sort of have their pick of the litter, which is a really interesting choice. And Stanford, I doubt coming to the Big 12, just going brand wise.
I do. Stanford's a big name. Stanford's a big Directors Cup school, and I just don't think the Big 12 loves that brand. And they Stanford waves like, oh well, we're smart, and the ACC values that. The Big 12 goes, we've got Iowa State, we have West Virginia, we have Houston. We don't really
like, dude, our acceptance rate's 95%. Like, what do you mean?
It's like, I hope that every Iowa State, West Virginia, and Houston fan, or anybody who holds degrees from there, is like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, they're like nobody's claiming that those are great academic institutions, and it's awesome. They aren't. Law of averages. Not everybody is. Those schools are really good at turning out good people who can also drink sometimes. And I have a lot of friends who went to all three of them that are still very smart people. But guess what? You're not Stanford. And the Big 12 goes, that's okay. We don't care that much. The Big 10, you'd have to have the AAU status. And Nebraska is like in limbo with that. And that's a big issue. It's like, dude, who gives a rip? Just make money and play good sports. That's all the Big 12 needs. It's all the SEC does too. You go to education from Alabama and it's like, yeah, everybody knows the school, but was it that prestigious? No, it wasn't that prestigious. That's fine. They've got their Vanderbilt, and there's some institutions in the Big 12 that are exceptions to that. But Stanford wise, don't necessarily need those cats. And North Carolina.
Example. Let's focus on the bigger brands.
Who would have thought that I would get so fired up about Stanford? I just hadn't even thought about them in the Big 12. And
just throwing names out there, but I was like, let's focus about the big brands, because it's like the Big 12. I feel like 2 or 3, 4 years ago, whenever Texas and Oklahoma were leaving, whenever that was, feels like a blur now. Yeah. They were in panic. They had schools trying to leave the conference to join the Pac-12. And now the Big 12 is in a position where they can look at a Stanford and be like, no, we're good. Like,
when it was Stanford that looked at Baylor and TCU and said, religious affiliation, is the education that good? I mean, there were reasons that the Conference of Champions didn't want certain Big 12 schools, and now the Conference of Champions is dead. Sorry, and the Big 12 is looking at poaching schools in the ACC and could likely tell Stanford no. But I do love North Carolina. I don't think they're a Big 12 school. I wish they were. I do think they end up going to the Big 10 because of their value. And Virginia is another one. You say like, oh well, they're stupid smart and have a huge endowment. Could they be an asset? They will be to somebody. If the Big 12 would be grateful to have. And somebody out there is going, well, wait a second. Louisville's better at football than Virginia and North Carolina. Yeah, they are. But this is not about who's good and who's bad at football. This is about long-term staying power. And North Carolina has it. And honestly, Miami, to an extent, Miami has it in the way the Big 12 needs it, not the way the SEC or Big 10 need it. So I think that's hopefully what's next for the Big 12's future.
What an exciting future. So magic number before we go for the Big 12, I would say 20, 22.
Bill Connolly said 32. And I was like, Bill, what are we doing, man? Like how, why?
So many teams.
I don't think 30. I just, I was like, Bill, I don't want Syracuse. And I don't want Wake Forest. Don't put that evil on me. Please stop.
Ricky Bobby.
I do think the Big 12 ends up going to 20 teams. And that means that certain schools get left off the table. We recreate the AAC with a Boston College and a Syracuse and a Wake Forest and a Washington State and Oregon State. That's kind of where we're going. And they become that middle of the pack conference that you've always had. You have the Power Five, that one guy that was kind of close, but not that close. But you knew that its members were the next for poaching. We'll get that formed again when the Big 12 goes to 20. They'll take 4 of the ACC schools that do not opt to go to the Big 10 or get invites to the Big 10 of the SEC. And from there, you'll have a very solid third best conference in the country, and they're going to be valuable. They're going to make money. Your school's going to live. And if you're a Big 12 program right now, this is good for you. This is all very good news for you.
Big 12 football, it's going to be exciting. Big 12 basketball, it's going to be exciting. The Big 12 conference as a whole, it's going to be exciting. And I need you guys to go check out Drake Toll over on Locked on Big 12, because he's got you covered every single day. I got you covered on the Buffs every single day over here on Locked on Buffs. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. And we will see you guys on our next episode.